Do any of y'all know who Derek Redmond is? So he's an amazing runner. He made it to the semifinals in the 400-meter dash for Great Britain in the 1992 Olympics. And he was favored to win. He's done really good up to that point. And so they start the race, the gun goes off, and he's going, he has a good start, and then around 250 meters, bang, he tears his hamstring. All that work just for this to happen. He slowly comes to a stop, gets on his knee. He's in so much pain from tearing his hamstring. There's people coming up, trying to help him. They even brought a stretcher, and then he just pushes them off and gets back up and starts hobbling his way to the finish line. And a little bit later, as he's on his way, some guy breaks through security and all the crowd, and it's his dad. And his dad's next to him and says, "You don't have to do this." And he yells back at him, "Yes, I do." And his dad was like, "Well, if you're going to do this, you're not going to finish it alone." And so they finish the race together, and Derek's screaming out in pain through the finish line. And he may have not won the race, but he won a lot of respect after that. If you turn with me to 2 Corinthians 4, and Michael touched on this a little bit this morning, but we're at the first century Christians in Corinth, and since they're the first century, they don't really have much people in front of them to look up to and see how they did, like Jews, for example. And we see here that they're struggling, and Paul writes to them to help them. And if we see here in verses 8 and 9, Paul has a metaphor. It's a jar of clay. It might not really come to us as much as it does to them in Corinth, because that's what they're known for. They're known for pottery. And if you go there today, it's easy to find just broken pieces of pottery all around. And so this metaphor is targeted for them. And we read in the first part of verse 8, "We are hard-pressed on every side, yet not crushed." Hard-pressed on every side, yet not crushed. Pressure won't crush you. I'm not saying you won't feel it. You're not going to feel it building up. You're not going to feel the pressure on all sides. I'm saying you're going to feel the pressure, but it's not going to crush you because of the hope we have in Jesus. Turn over to Exodus 14 with me, please. We went over this in Bible class a while ago, and we see here that the Israelites are coming out of Egypt, and they're going to the Promised Land, and the plagues have already happened, and Pharaoh let them go, and then as they're going away, Pharaoh changes his mind, and he sends his army after him, and the Israelites are stuck there in between the Red Sea and Pharaoh and his army. And we see here in 10 and 11. And when Pharaoh drew near, the children of Israel lifted their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, so they were very afraid. And the children of Israel cried out to the Lord. Then they said to Moses, "Because there were no graves in Egypt, have you taken us away to die in the wilderness? Why have you so dealt with us to bring us up out of Egypt?" we see here they felt the pressure from both sides, from not being able to go through the Red Sea and Pharaoh at first. And when we feel pressure, we do what the Israelites do. We blame and complain. We might not notice it, but it happens. And they blame Moses for what they're in. They complain about the circumstances they're in. And it's like, it was better in Egypt, even though it really wasn't. And I feel like if you blame and complain enough, that's just opening a ramp up to quit. And if you blame enough, you feel like the victim, and you can quit without feel like being a quitter. But that's not reality. And we all do this, like, more than we like to think, or more than we notice. Like, if I was rich, I could do this. If I was born in a different family, this other stuff would happen. I'd have more opportunities. If I had better parents, better friends. All this stuff we say, but we don't actually notice we're doing it. We blame and complain. And verse 13, Moses says to the people, "Do not be afraid, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall see again no more forever." Stand still. Sometimes when we feel the pressure, we don't think about God. We just think about the pressure. But sometimes we just need to stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. See what he's done and what he will do for us. There's something about pressure that allows God's glory to shine. For example, our cars. There's people that are going through these rough times, and then they get these cars, and it just makes them so happy. And since they're from the church, they hopefully turn to God as what those notes are meant for. And if we go back to 2 Corinthians, and the second part of verse 8. We are perplexed, but not just in despair. If you're like me, research what perplexed means, because I didn't know what that meant. And it's kind of basically just like confused, puzzled, and the way I put this is there is uncertainty, but do not be discouraged. Are we complex? Sometimes we have questions. We wonder about stuff, and like why this stuff happens and why this stuff doesn't happen, and we don't understand why most stuff happens. But we aren't in despair, because God knows what we don't. God sees what we don't see. In Hebrews 11:1, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. It says what faith is the assurance of things that can't be seen. And yes, there's times we feel perplexed, but we have faith to get us through it, and even God sees it even when we don't. And if we go down to verse 9 in 2 Corinthians 4. Persecuted but not forsaken, struck down but not destroyed. Struck down but not destroyed. We can see here, we can be assured of opposition that cannot stop us. And the second part of this verse, or what I just said, struck down but not destroyed, we can be knocked down but not knocked out. you're doing, for example, this, like, you're doing good, you're having a good day, it's been a good day, and then that right hook comes out of nowhere. That late night phone call no one wants to get. There was a bad accident, there was a bad diagnosis, etc. And that just might change your whole day, your whole life. You don't know. And that moment, you're knocked down, but you're not knocked out. You're not destroyed. But what gets us through this is hope. Not in this world, but in heaven. And Paul writes to them, and later in the verse 16 and 17. Therefore we do not lose heart, even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. You might think Paul doesn't know what you're going through. He doesn't know what you're in, what you've gone through, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. But put Paul's troubles against yours. Paul has been put into jail multiple times unjustly, and he's been whipped multiple times. He's been beaten with rods. He was even stoned, left to die. And you don't think he wanted to give up. He didn't feel the pressure. He didn't get knocked down, but he got up. And all he went through, he still finished his race. Even though he got knocked down, and he still finished his race through all that he's went through. And he knows what he's talking about what they're going through. And being this first century Christian isn't easy, but Paul's trying to help them through it. How's your race going? Are you having trouble with pressure, getting back up after being knocked down? Are you on the verge of quitting? There's plenty of people here today, this afternoon, that are willing to help you through this race. And it's okay to feel the pressure. And we're here for you as we stand and sing.